Welcome to Nantucket Community Television, Channel 18. I'm Charlie Walters. On April 9th, 2019, we will elect 2 people to the Select Board, and 6 men and women are running for those positions. I'm lucky enough to have one of them in the studio with me today. Charity Grace Mofsen, welcome to the studio.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Why are you running for a Select Board?
I'm running for Select Board because I want to help ensure that everyone on our island is well represented. I know that we've got some challenges facing the island right now, and I want to be a part of the solutions. So.
Affordable housing might be at the top of everybody's list for challenges ahead.
Yes.
Everyone agrees there's a problem, but not everyone agrees on how to go about fixing it.
Right.
What do you think?
I think that moving forward, we're going to have to be proactive. When we're not proactive, we find ourselves in a hole. And when we're in a hole, a lot of the options that are available to us may not be as ideal, or at least not as ideal as most would like. So I think that we're going to have to be creative in solving the situation that we're in right now. I don't think that there's going to be one solution to tackle the housing crisis on Nantucket, but I know that we can absolutely resolve the issue.
For a few weeks this winter, there was an idea on the table that the town of Nantucket would purchase the Nantucket Inn and refit it. That idea is now off the table, but were it still on the table, would you be in favor of it?
I would be in favor in exploring some more information. I know that it's a huge project. That being said, I think that there are potentially a lot of advantages for the community there. That front building having a lot of different options what that could be used for. I know I've heard people talk about a senior center, community center, that commercial kitchen could be used for local caterers, could potentially generate some revenue there as well. The fact that the 100 units that need to be retrofitted, they're already designed in a way that they're courtyards, which would provide for a nice quality of life, people being able to interact with their neighbors, children safely play. The back of the property offered opportunities there as well that could be further developed. So I'm in favor of homes, not just structures, but homes for people where they can feel like they live in a community. So
as a general proposition, whether it's the Nantucket Inn or which it no longer is,
right.
but as a general proposition, you have no problem with the town of Nantucket effectively going in the real estate business as one way of addressing the affordable housing situation.
I think the town of Nantucket is already in the business, so it's something that we have to do. I think that there still may be some confusion about 40Bs and the fact that that's state mandated law, and so I think it's going to require that we all take an active stance to address the issue.
Now, 40B being state law, under state law, the same law that applies to Nantucket applies to Boston.
Right.
And all the communities with populations, any population. Is that a wise idea? And if you don't think it is there anything Nantucket can do about that?
That's something that I would absolutely be interested in looking into. Nantucket is unique for a lot of different reasons, but the fact that we can't just go over to the next town over when it comes to housing or work, we're in a much different situation than a place like Boston. So I would be interested in seeing what changes could be made.
Affordable housing is almost always going to be outside of town. There's no space in town, for one thing, which leads to the question of transportation. If let's say you build affordable housing 2 miles out of town, how are you going to get there? Are there too many cars on Nantucket, or are people just not being wise in their driving habits?
I'm sure some could argue on both sides of that. I'm a fan of reducing the amount of vehicles that we have on the island. I know that we've already extended the hours, the availability of the shuttle bus. So that's something that I would like to see us look more at, to see how much more we can do with the buses on the island. Outside of that, I think that there are some other options that we can look at to maybe sharing rides, expanding the bike routes that we have on the island currently. So I think that there are definitely ways that we could reduce the amount of vehicles on the road and ensure that everyone gets to where they need to be.
If you were to limit the number of vehicles, how would you go about doing that? State, local?
I think we'd start local. Some of the ideas that I just mentioned, just as far as encouraging people to use the bus more, to participate in ride shares, and then from there we can look at some other options that we might have available to us.
Is paid parking a good idea for Nantucket? Say on Main Street, charging people to park their car there?
I'd be interested in getting some more details about that. If we're talking about paid parking for, the busy months, or are we talking about paid parking for the entire year? How much we'd be charging? Who's going to enforce it? I think there's a lot of factors that would go into that.
And the downtown parking garage. You can't talk about transportation without talking about that.
Right.
Does that make sense to you?
That's another area where I would definitely like to see more information. I did hear an idea that someone mentioned about, in the event that a parking garage was going to be built, that it be designed in a way that, after we no longer need parking garage that large, that it could easily be converted into something else, whether that be more affordable housing or something else that the town could use. So it's not just, a large amount of money going into a project that only has one purpose.
If there were a garage to be built in the area that people were talking about, approximately where the Stop and Shop parking lot is downtown, that's in a floodplain, which leads to the question of that whole area, Brand Point, all the way down past Great Harbor Yacht Club, and other places around the island are in a floodplain. With sea level rise, this is not going to be getting better. It's only going to be getting worse. How should Nantucket cope with that?
We absolutely need to be proactive in thinking about steps that can be taken to preserve downtown and ultimately the rest of the island. Because in thinking long term, if we're already talking about that particular area right now, I think that it's only a matter of time before, unfortunately, we could be sitting here talking about other areas as well. So.
And how do you do that? Do you build barriers? Do you?
I've been doing a little bit of reading. I would definitely want to refer to some experts. So far, I haven't been completely thrilled with some of the options that I've seen out there. But as I mentioned earlier, when we find ourselves in a hole, sometimes the options that we have available to us aren't as ideal as we would like, but we've got to make a decision. So.
Now as I mentioned, you're one of two people running you're one of six people running
Yes.
for two spots on the Board of Selectmen.
Yes.
And this is a pattern that's been recurring in recent years. You get a lot of people running for selectmen and not enough people running for some of the other elective offices. How do you encourage people to run for, say, Shellfish Harbor Advisory Board, where there are more open spaces than there are candidates running for them?
It's a good question. Sometimes I wonder if everyone is aware when some of these roles are open. I would love to see more people in our community participate. We've got some brilliant minds here, some incredibly creative people, and hopefully, in a situation like this where people are paying attention and seeing that there are 6 of us running for 2 seats, that maybe they will be encouraged to get involved either on a committee or running for another elected position as well.
Now, being on the select board means an awful lot of time and hardly any pay for it.
Right.
I mean, technically, it's not a volunteer position, but for all intents and purposes, that's what it amounts to.
Right.
Should that change? Should we be thinking about having a permanent full-time select board for Nantucket?
I think it's an interesting concept. Looking at the time commitment and the fact that it will easily eat into the average person's workday. Until we figure out something, either a way to supplement or I don't think that the time commitment can be reduced, but that is going to limit who can even participate in this sort of role. So I would be interested in seeing what our options are, how that might be modified to open it up to more people to be involved.
There's an analogous situation, a similar situation with a lot of the non-elected boards and commissions.
Right.
Every spring, there are about 25 of those that people are appointed to, and there's a similar problem. They don't have enough people applying for the positions. How much of a difference does it make, in your view, that these are non-elective positions that we're still having trouble getting people interested in? And of course, they're not paid.
Right. A lot of times I go back to education, and sometimes I feel like in situations like these, we can fix the problem or we can fix the issue with more education. So making sure that people are not only aware that these roles are available, but making sure that they have easily accessible information so they can learn about the issues. They can learn about, what each committee is actually doing. Because I know a lot of people might feel like they don't know enough to get involved, and that they can't learn it. But it's absolutely possible.
Annual town meeting is another flashpoint for a lot of people. We have somewhere between 8,000 and 10,000 registered voters, but there are only 800 seats up at the high school where annual town meeting takes place. And in many cases, only 200 or 300 people are in those seats. So you get a situation where maybe 5% of the voters are deciding matters for 100% of the voters.
Right.
Has Nantucket outgrown the annual town meeting as it's currently set up?
Right. I'm not ready to. I'm not ready to give it up. Yeah, I want to say that I would love for us to have the problem of running out of space in the high school. That would be a wonderful problem to have. And outside of more education and encouraging people to take an active role in their community and the decisions being made there, I'm not really sure what else we could do. I know that childcare has been provided, in the past. I think that would be a good option as well. I know that a lot of people, that is a factor for them. The time is sometimes a factor for people. It's not ideal. It's not very beneficial for, basically a handful of people to be deciding what's best for the entire island.
Well, based on what you just said, would you be in favor of considering a representative kind of town meeting where you split the town up into neighborhoods?
Right.
One individual represents that neighborhood, and he or she would be voting at town meeting instead of any registered voter who could show up and
Right.
Fit into the room.
Yeah. So I'm actually waiting to hear back about a report from some local officials who went off island to take a little field trip to learn a bit more. I think they were in Falmouth to learn about their representative government there. I'm open to considering whatever is going to be best for Nantucket. I will say that one of the things that encouraged me and a lot of the young people that I know that want to be involved in the town, participating at annual town meeting, going, seeing how we can actually have a voice. And one of the things that I really love is that when you're voting in that sort of environment, I think you kind of have a greater responsibility. You know the decision that you're making and how it's going to affect your neighbors because you probably heard from them. Somebody stood up and, either voiced their approval or they talked about how it was going to affect them in a negative way. So I think that not only does that give us more information, hearing from our neighbors and how these different decisions will affect them, but also we can't pretend that we didn't know. I think it has more of a community feel, I guess.
Let's take a break from politics for a moment. Where are you from? How long have you been here? What are you doing when you're not running for the select board?
So I'm originally from North Carolina. I was born on the coast. My dad was in the Navy. My educational background is in sustainable residential design and development. I'm hoping to put that to use here on Nantucket. When I'm not working or at meetings for Affordable Housing Trust or running for select board, you'll probably find me chasing sunsets or playing music with my husband, Michael. We have a great little puppy, Herschel, that we spend a lot of time with. So we take a lot of walks around the island. Pretty laid back.
Back to the important stuff now. Not that what you said is not important, but
it's not as juicy.
More germane to this conversation. How's that? That sounds better. Enforcement has become an issue in Nantucket. I'm not talking about just parking tickets, but enforcement of regulations with entertainment licenses for downtown businesses, or making sure that fertilizer is being used in the right way and all that sort of thing. Obviously, that costs money, needs personnel to do it, and so on. Do we have enough people doing enforcement?
That's a good question. I think because of how drastically things change during the summer, I'll be really interested to see all of the information that we get from the data platform group, just to see. We know that already that there's so many more people than we had originally thought. And so I think with that information, if there's a gap somewhere, if we need more people, we'll know, and then we can make some changes there.
If there isn't enough money in the budget to cover additional personnel, if that was the direction the town wanted to go in, would you want to raise real estate taxes? Would you want to raise fees for permits and so on? How would the town raise more money than it's already coming up with?
I don't know that I'm in a position today to pick exactly where in the budget we should be, taking money from. But I will say that it's important enough that we would have to figure out how to add that to the budget, because if a policy, if a regulation, if a law can't be enforced, what's the point?
Is Nantucket, and not necessarily town government, but Nantucket in general, doing enough to utilize non-fossil fuel sources of energy? Tidal, geothermal, wind, solar, whatever it happens to be.
I think we can do more.
And what should we do and how can we do it?
At the very least, I don't think we've even scratched the surface when it comes to the ways that we can use our roofs. So I know that, based on HCC guidelines, things like solar panels, not ideal for them to be seen from the street, especially, if you're in town, in a place like Cliff Road, it's probably not going to be approved. That being said, there are so many properties on the island that have at least a portion of their roof that could generate energy from the sun and not be visible from the road. So I would really like to see us start to take advantage of more of that, whether it means providing incentives for people to add them to their roofs or not. But we're in a position that we use a lot of energy on the island, and we have the opportunity to generate a lot of the energy that we're consuming. So,
National Grid is telling us that we may be seeing a third cable in addition to the two we already have.
Right.
What do you think?
I think
is that a way we should be encouraging them to go, or?
I would like to see Nantucket become energy independent. And so what that would require is us to really start taking advantage of all of our different options of generating our own energy here. So we don't have to even think about having that third cable.
There was an energy study committee that did a lot of work a few years ago when there was talk of building a windmill at the landfill, which obviously didn't happen. But would you like to see an energy study committee of some sort be a permanent part of the Nantucket governmental landscape?
Absolutely.
Appointed by the select board or by the town manager or what have you?
Yes.
Not an elected.
No, I think appointed or elected, but I think appointed. The town leadership, that's something that I think they could handle.
Nantucket being an island and a gradually shrinking island, there's not going to be any additional space for people to be building houses. And the space we already have, the day will come sometime when there are no buildable lots left on Nantucket. When you look at Nantucket long term and think about the limits to growth, what do you see ahead for Nantucket? Or what would you like to see ahead for Nantucket? Are we growing too fast? Should we not grow at all? Should we throw caution to the wind and say, fine, if it makes money, we should encourage people to do it? What do you think of all that?
So I mentioned earlier my degree is in sustainable residential design and development.
Yes.
So I would like to see us really implement some more sustainability when we're talking about anything, whether it's development or transportation. But realistically, I don't think it's an either or, that we either develop, that we grow, or that we halt everything. There's a way to, honor and preserve, Nantucket's historic charm and the beautiful open spaces that we all love, while also making sure that we're being proactive, and anticipating the inevitable changes that we face.
Nantucket's economy right now is built on tourism, and I would include building as part of that.
Right.
Are we wise to have so many eggs in one basket, or should we be encouraging I don't know how, but should we be encouraging non-tourist parts of the economy?
I think we absolutely should. And that's not to say that, once again, we have to pick one or the other. But I think that we should definitely be putting some more emphasis on looking at industries that aren't necessarily tourism driven.
You've talked a lot about studies and that sort of thing. Once you have a study that gives you information, how do you determine how to act on it? Should that be the province of just the select board? Should things be brought to annual town meeting? Should more committees be set up to make recommendations?
I think it's case by case for sure. But the whole purpose in having a study done is to give you more information so you can act, not to keep it going. So ideally, that's the way the studies are used, that we get the information and then we move.
Charity Grace Mofsen, thanks for coming by the studio today.
Thank you, Charlie.
Good luck in your campaign. And don't forget to vote. Town meeting is April 9. Town meeting is April 1.
Yes.
Town election is April 9. For Nantucket Community Television, I'm Charlie Walters. Thank you for tuning in. Please tune in again.